The sound of shattered porcelain echoed through the marble halls just as Adrian stepped into the mansion. He had returned a week earlier than planned, exhausted from a long overseas business trip, carrying nothing but the hope of surprising the woman he loved. But the moment he crossed the threshold, he froze. In the center of the grand living room stood his pregnant wife, Elena, her trembling hands wrapped protectively around her swollen belly, her eyes full of tears she was trying desperately not to let fall. Facing her was his mother, Veronica, elegant as always in silk and diamonds, but with cruelty burning in her eyes as she pointed toward the front door like Elena was nothing more than an unwanted servant. A half-packed suitcase lay at Elena's feet, clothes spilling across the polished floor. And in that moment, Adrian realized the home he had promised would be a safe haven for his wife had quietly become her prison. Before we go any further, if you believe kindness matters, if you believe people deserve second chances, and if your heart is already breaking for Elena, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who loves emotional stories, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful journeys like this one. Elena had once believed marrying Adrian would be the beginning of a beautiful life. He was kind, patient, and unlike the cold world of wealth he had been born into, he carried warmth in his heart. When he married her, he promised that no matter how grand the mansion was, it would only ever feel like home if she felt safe inside it. But shortly after the wedding, Adrian had been called away for months to expand the family company overseas, and Elena was left behind in the care of the very woman who had never wanted her there. Veronica had smiled for the guests at the wedding, but behind closed doors, her disdain for Elena had never softened. In Veronica's eyes, Elena was too simple, too quiet, too ordinary for the son she had spent her life grooming to inherit everything. And when Elena became pregnant, instead of seeing the child as a blessing, Veronica saw it as a chain tying her son forever to a woman she had never accepted. At first, the cruelty came in whispers and small humiliations. Veronica criticized the way Elena dressed, the way she ate, the way she arranged flowers in the dining room. She would invite wealthy friends over for tea and make Elena serve them like staff, introducing her not as Adrian's wife but as the girl Adrian insisted on bringing into the family. Elena endured it all in silence, telling herself that Adrian was working hard for their future and that she could survive a few cruel words if it meant protecting his peace of mind. But as her pregnancy advanced and her body grew heavier, Veronica's treatment grew harsher. Meals were withheld if Elena refused to attend long social dinners. Doctor appointments were dismissed as dramatic excuses. One rainy evening, when Elena became dizzy on the staircase, Veronica accused her of pretending for attention instead of calling for help. The house was full of servants, chandeliers, priceless art, and endless luxury, but Elena had never felt more alone. The only thing that kept her going was the child growing inside her. At night, when the mansion fell quiet and moonlight stretched across the nursery she had secretly begun preparing, Elena would rest a hand on her stomach and whisper promises to her unborn baby. She promised that no matter how cruel the world felt now, she would keep fighting. She promised her child would know love, even if she herself was starving for it. And in those private moments, she held onto the memory of Adrian's voice, the gentleness in his eyes, the way he had kissed her forehead before leaving and told her to call him if she ever needed anything. But Elena never called. She knew Adrian was carrying the weight of his father's failing business empire, and she couldn't bear to become another burden on shoulders already bent by responsibility. Then came the day everything collapsed. Veronica had discovered the nursery Elena had been preparing in one of the unused East Wing rooms. It wasn't lavish, just a simple crib, a few folded baby clothes, and a hand-painted moon on the wall Elena had made herself. To Elena, it was hope. To Veronica, it was defiance. She tore through the room in fury, ordering servants to remove everything. She called the nursery pathetic and said no grandchild of hers would be raised by a woman who didn't belong in the family. When Elena begged her to stop, Veronica accused her of trapping Adrian with the baby and declared that before Adrian returned, Elena would be gone. That was why the suitcase now sat by the door. That was why Elena stood there, pale and shaking, while Veronica tried to throw her out of the house she had every right to call home. Adrian had heard enough before he stepped fully into the room. His voice cut through the air like thunder, stopping everyone in place. The silence that followed was so heavy it seemed to swallow the entire mansion. Veronica's face drained of color as she turned and saw her son standing there, his suitcase still in his hand, his eyes fixed not on her but on the woman trembling in front of him. Adrian rushed to Elena first. He dropped to his knees before her, gently gathering the clothes that had spilled onto the floor, then rose and wrapped his arms around her as though trying to shield her from every cruel moment she had endured in his absence. Elena broke then, the tears she had held back for months spilling freely against his chest. For the first time since he left, she allowed herself to feel how exhausted, humiliated, and frightened she had truly been. What hurt Adrian most was not just what he had seen, but what he had failed to see. As Elena trembled in his arms, he noticed how much thinner she had become, the shadows beneath her eyes, the way she flinched at sudden movement. This was not the radiant woman he had kissed goodbye. This was someone who had been surviving, not living. And in that moment, Adrian understood that while he had been building a future for his family, he had left his wife alone in the hands of someone determined to break her. He turned to his mother with a calmness far more terrifying than anger and told her that if she could treat the mother of his child with such cruelty, then she had no place in the life he was trying to build. Veronica tried to defend herself. She spoke of standards, reputation, family legacy, all the things she had valued more than compassion. But Adrian saw through every excuse. He told her that legacy meant nothing if it was built on humiliation, and that wealth was worthless if it stripped a person of their humanity. That night, for the first time in his life, Adrian chose love over obedience. He arranged for Veronica to move to the family's country estate, far from Elena and far from the child she had tried to reject before it was even born. The servants who had watched Elena suffer in silence lowered their heads in shame, and the mansion that had once echoed with Veronica's cold authority finally fell still. The weeks that followed were not magically easy, but they were honest. Adrian cancelled meetings, delegated work, and stayed home to care for Elena. He attended every doctor's appointment, cooked with her in the kitchen when she could finally eat in peace, and spent evenings repainting the nursery exactly the way she had imagined it. Slowly, the fear in Elena's eyes began to soften. She smiled more. She laughed again. She let herself believe that perhaps the mansion could become a home after all, not because of its size or beauty, but because the person beside her was finally fully present. And when their daughter was born on a quiet spring morning, Adrian held both mother and child with tears in his eyes, overwhelmed by how close he had come to losing the very heart of his life without ever realizing it. Months later, Veronica sent letters asking for forgiveness. Elena, with the softness that had survived even cruelty, did not answer with revenge. She asked Adrian only for time. She wanted their daughter to grow up in a home where kindness was stronger than bitterness, but she also knew that healing did not mean pretending the wounds never happened. So they took things slowly. Boundaries were set. Respect was no longer negotiable. And in that choice, Elena found something even greater than acceptance. She found her own voice. If this story is touching your heart so far, take a second to write in the comments, "Kindness will always win." I'd truly love to see it. Years later, when their little girl ran laughing through the same marble halls that had once witnessed so much pain, Elena would sometimes pause and watch her with tears in her eyes. Not tears of sorrow this time, but gratitude. She had learned that love is not proven in promises spoken during beautiful moments. It is proven in the choices people make when the truth is ugly, when standing up costs them comfort, when protecting someone means disappointing the very people who raised them. Adrian had failed her once by not seeing her pain, but he redeemed himself by refusing to look away when it mattered most. And Elena, who had once stood alone with a suitcase at her feet, became the quiet strength that transformed a broken house into a family. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that love should protect and never humiliate, please like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And if you want more emotional, heart-touching stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is stand up for the one who has been suffering in silence, and sometimes, that single act of courage changes everything.